Good afternoon, everyone. As you heard, my name's Heather Jensen. I'm a financial advisor and I have been in the industry for many, many years, over 15 plus years as a financial planner, and before that as an accountant. So I've been working with numbers and financial markets for a long time, and I can easily say this is not something I have seen. No one has seen this situation before. And so it's all new territory for everyone. What I'd like to talk to you, though, about today is let's not waste the opportunity to set ourselves up for after this event. So I'm not going to run through today about the particular packages that the government has provided you. I'm assuming that you have some knowledge of that. And because now that we're easing some restrictions, they may cease in the near future anyway, but I wanted to go back to basics around what you can do, that you can take control of, that you can set yourself up for the future. I am going to provide you with some slides, and I've only got 4, so don't worry, I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint, but I must. The first slide is the disclaimer. As a financial advisor, I'm heavily regulated by ASIC, and so I am required to let you know that I'm not giving you personal advice. This is general advice only. It's totally up to you then to seek your own advice from a professional advisor if you wish, or make sure you do some research around your particular circumstances and whether what I'm going to be talking about, is relevant for you or not. So let's get into it. The next one, of course, is the heading. I set this topic, Financial Reset, Never Waste a Good Crisis. It was Winston Churchill who said that quote, never waste a good crisis. Now, of course, you might recall when he said that, it was during the war, World War II. And it feels like, I think, we're under siege today. Things are being set by government. We are restricted globally, and it's almost like war restrictions. No, I won't say that. However, this is, as we've all heard before, this is unprecedented. I am in uncharted territory in terms of financial markets and how the investments are tracking at this point in time. What it has done, and what I am going to focus more on, is the ability for you now to reset and use this time, because this has been imposed on us. Our behaviours have changed because of the environment that we're in at the moment. And why is that important? When you think of the word crisis, when we're in crisis mode, our behaviour is either flight or fight. We've all heard this before. As soon as we're attacked and we feel fear, we either get angry or we run away, or we make, obviously, irrational decisions because the part of our brain takes over and we're not actually using our rational part of the brain. This is no different. The behaviour that I'm seeing from a financial point of view has some elements of that. Let me give you an example of people withdrawing from their super. The government allowed for those who meet certain requirements to be able to pull out of their super $10,000. We're seeing, I looked up the numbers, and it's 757,000 so far that the ATO have approved for withdrawals from super, and it's averaging about 8,300 per approval. That's a lot, and I'm not suggesting you do that. If at all, if you can possibly, if you absolutely need to do that, I'm not saying no. I'm simply saying please seek advice before you pull any money out of super, because that kind of money being pulled out of your super for the long-term needs for your retirement has a massive impact due to compounding of interest and on your money. Okay, but that's the kind of issue that we are facing, in the sense of, yes, it's a great opportunity for those who absolutely need the money, but unfortunately there may be some people who are saying, well, I'd rather pull the money out, it's better in my pocket than it is in super. Not a good reaction. That's not using the rational side, because markets will pick up. They will, over time, come back up, and we'll have another period of growth. And then once again, we'll have another crisis and or negative event in the future. But knee-jerk reactions is unfortunately what happens, particularly in financial markets. And that's why we see negative growth, but bigger negative growth, because people are becoming concerned and using fear as their decision making. I wanted to show you then this slide, and why now is a great opportunity to change our behaviour and reset ourselves financially. And that's because this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most people know about it. Usually it looks like a triangle, but I've just got a different picture that I was able to find to show that normally we've satisfied, particularly in Australia I'm talking about, we have normally satisfied, you know, needs 1 through up to around 4. For those of us who are up at 5, fantastic. What this pandemic has done is actually brought us right back to worrying about basic needs, and that is around the 1 and 2 for some people. Security, job security, physical and health security is being threatened. So we focus then on, because Maslow then suggests that we have to meet those needs before we move up the ladder, before we can move back into being able to give to others, worry about other people. We're tending to then focus on ourselves, because our immediate needs in that section are not being met. So now that we're focusing on ourselves, that's why I want us to rethink and focus on then, okay, once we're out of this and we're back on track, how are we going to create those opportunities to set ourselves up? And that is why I think it's a great time for us to reset now while we're struggling at the moment. As they say, never, and that's why I've suggested, never waste a good crisis. Yes, your immediate needs are very important for you to focus on right now, but then 6 months down the track, perhaps 12 months, depending on your circumstances, right now is when you should be planning and setting yourself, looking at the future. And so this is my last slide. These are the topics. I'm just going to then give you some tips, because I've got a very short time frame. And these are the things I thought perhaps this is exactly what you should be doing. So if we look at goals, it is so important to have a plan. If you have a goal and you're a really good goal setter, fantastic. Obviously, your goals have been thrown totally out of whack with what's happening at the moment. Perhaps you're in business. You'll have business goals, but also personal goals. Whichever goals, always do both at the same time. You can't do your business goals unless you're actually looking at your personal goals as well, because they dovetail into each other. You also can't set your goals unless you're doing it with your community. When I say your community, your partner, your family, you need to get everyone involved as well, because it's not about just you. Yes, you can set your own goals, but we are social beings, and we are involved in a family situation, and it's so important to bring them along on the journey or get their input, because it's amazing how they'll have different ideas. So do both. And the idea is, we all know about goal setting. You can Google how to set goals, but the main thing is split them into short-term, medium-term, long-term. Short-term for me has always been the next 12 months. If If you're in a situation where work is very dicey, you don't have any, for you, your short term is going to be 6 months because you've got to survive. Then it's the next 6 months after that when you are back at work. Medium term, 2 to 3 years, purely because then you're thinking a bit more long term, you're making bigger decisions around your business and your family and what's important to you. And long term then is, well, when am I going to retire? I'm talking 4+ years. What's the big plan? Where are you going to retire? Start thinking about that, because if you're not thinking about that for your future, you're not bringing all of that. You may be totally off track with all of your short-term and medium-term goals. If you don't plan, let's face it, you're reacting to everyone else's plan. And this is what we're doing at the moment. We're reacting to what is being imposed on us by government. If you haven't set your goals, you then cannot adapt to what has happened either. And we don't know what's going to happen. We may have an outbreak. We don't know. So we need to make sure that we have set in place what we think we should be doing, how we're going to get there. So it's not just setting goals, it's also create your action plan, because without actions, nothing ever gets done either. The second point I've got on the slide is emergency money. Now, these are not in any particular order. I haven't set these out that you do 1 through to 7. It's just as I thought of them, and also because emergency money, for those who are in a position that you're going okay, you've still got work, you're still creating income from your business. I don't know about you, but if you're in that situation, you're not spending as much because you're not doing the things that you were doing before. And my credit card's the healthiest it's ever been, or if you're not a credit card person, then your savings are probably quite good at the moment. Great opportunity to use this time to set yourself up and set aside those funds. Don't go out and splurge them as soon as we're out and about. Create an emergency pot of money, and I suggest between 2 to 3 months of your regular income. So if you're earning quite a high amount, you should have that sitting in cash as your emergency pot, because this is what's happened. We've had 1 month off, almost a month and a half. We may be off for the next 3 for some people. If you've got that money sitting in savings, that's what you're eating into. Always set aside at least 2 to 3 months. For some people, 6 months, but 2 to 3 months is usually the average for people to set aside. It may sound a lot of money, but this is what you use it for. It's for emergency. You use it and then you top it back up, and you always set yourself to that limit. And then once that's in place, you look at your other goals, okay? For those of you who are obviously not working, you're using your savings and drawing it down. So until you're back in a situation where you're in a better frame of mind, you're not worrying about immediate needs and you're needing that money later, put it aside, set this goal aside for later and start setting up your emergency money once everything's all back on track. Save, gosh, save. Here's the third point I've got here. Once again, once everything is back to normal, this is once again part of your goals. What is it after 6 months that you're going to set aside your savings plan? And I recommend 10% of your income should be set aside somewhere for medium to long-term goals. Medium goals could be for the replacement of car, could be replacement of, I don't like people going into debt, and I'm going to come to debt in a moment. But if you've set aside, we got to reset ourselves to start thinking about setting money aside to pay for things, that holiday in the future, the car, the new kitchen, the renovations. We've got to set aside rather than using debt and drawing on debt to do these things. And so 10% in your savings, holiday goal, plan, whatever it is that you have set yourself up. If you need more, then you need to set aside more. But also, if you don't have anything planned and you don't, or you have more than 10% surplus in your cash flow, you should also be adding 10% to your super. So for some people, it can be between 10 and 20%. If that's not you, you just don't have that surplus because your income isn't enough for your expenses. You know, anything that you can set aside, even if it's 1%, 2%, 5% minimum, is terrific to feel on top of things when we have these kind of issues. But the idea is switch from using debt to using your own funds to pay for things. And if you can't pay for things, you don't buy it. This is the biggest change. I'm hoping you realise that your behaviour, you haven't had the ability to spend and go out and do things. Have you missed it? Have you really seriously felt that you've missed those things? Now, I miss personal contact, absolutely, but I don't miss actually all the things that I was doing before. I've connected with family and I've enjoyed doing things that are free with family. So rethink, that's part of your goal setting, but also rethink what you're spending your money on. And if you don't need it, save it for the big thing that you do want down the track. Number 4, budget. Oh my gosh, budget. Everyone hates this word, but if you don't have one, do one. You've got time before we're all back on track. Do one. There are some amazing apps out there that are free. If you're with a particular bank, they will have an app to assist you with budgeting or tracking your spending, because you won't know how much you spend on things until you track your spending. And then you can set aside, okay, well, how much should I be spending? And that's what a budget's all about. How much should I be spending and how am I tracking to that? Because you don't know what your positive surplus is of cash flow unless you're actually tracked how much you've spent. Some examples of some apps. There's a great one I really like. It's called Money Brilliant. If you're not going to use your bank's app, Google it. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but search Money Brilliant. Another one is called Pocketbook. So you'll see a number of them around, but these are free. What they do is they track and link your bank accounts to the app, and then you assign what are you spending your money on, and then it remembers that. And so next time that item comes in again from that particular company that you've spent money on, it'll assign it to that category. So it takes a while to set up, but then you're off and running to track it. And then you get these wonderful reports that show you, well, how much are you spending? And then you can set your budget. You can say, well, really, I should have only spent X on that. If you're over 1 month, you stop spending and then you're off and running with the next month and you try and assign it that way. Debts. Australia is, would you believe, the second highest in the world that holds household debt to GDP. That's not a good thing. That is actually one of our biggest issues in Australia. It's predominantly credit card debt, followed by household debt, followed by actually student loans due to our system in Australia of paying later for our university. That unfortunately means that if in the future, and I'm not thinking that they will potentially, but if interest rates rise in the next 2 to 3 years, we don't have a lot of room to move because our debts are so high. So once again, this is an opportunity to focus on, if you can, get rid of those credit cards. I know that sounds terrible and I use the points and I'm locked into points as well, but you need to work it for you. Bring your limit down if you really like to have a credit card. But I certainly recommend for young people, get rid of them, use your debit cards, live on your cash flow, not borrow to buy things. I even prefer that you don't borrow for cars, save for a car and don't buy the most expensive one. There's no need. A car is a car, and that's for you. Once again, it's a behaviour thing. If it's a esteem, a status thing. Okay, but we're too high. We need to drop it and start to eliminate debt. Super, always review your super. This is a long-term thing. Try not to touch it, even though you're allowed that 10,000, try not to touch it, but check your fees on your super, check the investment style you're in, at least take an interest in the reports that you receive. There are some websites, Chant West and Super Ratings, that you can have a look at to review your super, or see a financial advisor. And I put there tax because we are coming up to the end of the financial year, and some of you may be receiving tax refunds, particularly if you have reduced your work. Now, obviously, for some people, that means you'll need that money to live on, or you've increased you've used a credit card, and so you're going to use that money, but pay off debt. First thing is pay off debt. I know so many people who use it to go off on a holiday. Pay off the debt, or set up your emergency fund, rather than do that.